So just referrals, I guess I get call reluctance like I think everybody does. So I don't know if I'm answering your question directly, but what are some scripts and things, excuses to follow up with your sphere?
That's a great question.
And then I'm going to add to that and say I was watching that Progressive commercial where they're talking about how to leave a proper voice message. Have you seen this one?
I haven't seen it. No.
Oh, they said, no, what's wrong with this? Oh, you didn't repeat the number. You got to repeat the number. No, that's not it. And he says, well, you got to do this. No, that's not it. The answer is text. It's a lot easier than a voicemail. and I kind of resemble that remark. And I'm 48 and I feel like I'm about 78 when I watch that commercial. But anyways, so maybe it's not a phone call at all.
Sure. That's a good question. So let's open up on that a little bit. The question, the base question is, how do you reach out by, how do you touch your people in your PCSY, your past client sphere of influence, and especially if you're going to do it by phone and you've got a little bit of call reluctance going. And you mentioned one idea was texting. I'll let you know that I've talked to a lot of people, and there's a lot of different options here. One of them is texting, though. For instance, Monica Angeles comes to mind. She closed 162 transactions last year as a solo agent, just mind-blowing numbers. She actually has a hard time picking up the phone and calling people. She doesn't have a problem when she's talking to people, but she doesn't like to reach out kind of in that cold call medium where she's reaching out directly. And so what she likes to do is actually use text messages to reach out to people initially and start a dialogue. And usually the way, if you've got any call reluctance, if you're coming from that camp, because some people are hard chargers, they're fine with making those phone calls. They're usually if you look at DISC, they're usually in the D category or maybe the I category. It's a little easier for them to do that initial reach out. If you're in the C or the S category, it's harder. And so if you're in the category that has any kind of reluctance, the easiest thing to do is to not talk about real estate. Okay. So you actually just reach out like a friend and say, hey, how you doing? I know that sounds silly, but remember, if you build your business on relationships, it's going to last you over the long haul, as opposed to building your business on transactions. I know that from personal experience. That's what I was doing, what a lot of people doing, because you get in the business, you're trying to get the business real quick. So if you are going to go along the idea of a relationship building, then the big thing you want to do is ask questions. Ask questions because it gets the other side talking. And so the questions like, how are you doing today? How is things going? And whatever line they start to go by, you're going to try to pick something out of there. Whatever they start talking about, you can go 3 levels deep in the question, right? So if they say, yeah, I just got back from a yoga class, you say, oh, well, that's fantastic. How long have you been doing yoga? What benefits have you received? Now you start to ask more questions. What benefits have you received from yoga? That's always been interesting to me. What do you like the most about when you go do yoga? Do you have yoga partners? How often do you go? What do you think is the biggest benefit? Are there any drawbacks that you've had? You're going to kind of go down that path just like you would with any friend, and you're going to talk about what's going on in their life.
So let me interject for a second, since it's just a small amount of people on the
Go
call.
ahead, Dean.
So I'm actually not. I don't do DISC, but what's the one with the amiable, expressive?
Right, that's probably
driver.
Myers-Briggs.
Yeah, Myers-Briggs. So I've done that a bunch of times. I've done DISC, but I can't remember what all that is. So I am extremely low amiable. I am a driver and a expressive, and with a pretty high analytical. So I'm completely weighted in that direction and almost no amiable. So I don't really struggle with that part. And then once I get talking, that part's easy. It's just that opening reason to call. Like, why am I? Because they all know in my head, they all know I'm calling for business, even though I'm not talking about it. So what am I going to talk about? Maybe It's because I am a driver and I want to get straight to the point.
What script have you used before that's worked for you, or what script are you trying to use now that's creating some resistance for you that you're having a hard time working through?
Well, truth be told, I was licensed in 2009, and I worked my ass off for 3 years, and then I haven't prospected for 10.
Right. So you did prospect hard for 3 years, and then you
Yeah.
pulled back and done other things, and it's hard to jump back into it.
The phone just rang and it was great. And now I've got to get back into it. I mean, I don't, what, you know
Sure.
my background. I don't have to, but I've got to keep the wife off my back. So I got to start making a little bit more money.
Right. And then, let's go to answer a couple quick things there. So you need to create a habit again, right? That's the
Yeah,
real
exactly.
issue. And a habit takes 30 to 60 days. Typically, it depends on who you look at and what survey you follow, blah, blah, blah. But if at least 30 days is pretty common, but sometimes it takes as much as 60. It's why I'm bringing it up. You might have to do it for more than 30 where you're really getting into it. And depending on your personality, you may need to ease into it. Like you're just going to make one call today and two calls tomorrow and three calls the next day. Kind of ease yourself into it. If you're really hard charging D, you might just have to throw yourself into it and you're going to make X calls today, 20, 50, whatever your ultimate goal is.
Yeah.
And you got to tie it into the why. Why are you doing it? That's the driver for you to actually remember why you're making those calls. Do you want to, do you need to do it because you have no business? Do you want to do it because you want to grow your business, or there's something you want to achieve? You want to buy a boat or a car or a house or 7 rentals, or you have some objective or goal or reason for getting into it. Then that's kind of that driver for why you're going to do it. As far as the topic, if you're a hardcore D, there are people that do it this way, and they'll call up. Now, they do it in a very friendly fashion. I don't want to give the wrong impression, but they just call up and say, "Hey, how's it going?" And the other side says, "Great." And the first thing they say is, "Hey, this is a business call. This is a business call. It's a Mike Ferry script, right? This is a business call. Hey, by the way, have you all thought about moving in the next 60, 90 days, right?" I mean, that's the very direct approach. And it does work. As long as you preface it with this is a business call, you're going to have some good success there. And of course, you ask about what their plans are. You ask them if they know anybody thinking about buying or selling. You kind of go down that line, a very direct route.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think so right away I like that, but I would twist it a little and say, "Hey, I'm just calling to network. It's a business call, calling for networking purposes. What have you been up to?"
Sure. So now you've stepped back a little bit and you've softened it up. And remember, all these approaches work as long as you get into conversation with people. So let's start there. But you can definitely do that. You can step back and make it a little bit of softer approach. You didn't like where I was going earlier with the very personal approach, but you're staying right on track with a business approach, with the networking, right? So how would you follow up that? You'd say, "Hey, I'm calling for a networking opportunity here." What would you say next?
Just I'm a little unique. It would depend on the person, but there's a couple people I got to call for my insurance gig I do on the side, and Medicare enrollment's coming up. So I've been calling my financial advisors. They don't know a thing about Medicare, so maybe I can help them grow their business. But while we're at it, let's talk real estate, something like that. Or that in my case, it could be, "Hey, I've posted a few things about Medicare, but I'm a full-time realtor and a part-time Medicare salesman. Just wanted to clarify that."
Sure.
Something to that effect. But we haven't talked for a while, just checking in, wanted to clear the air. I probably got to brainstorm it. And in the past, when I did cold call for 3 years straight, I probably had about, 5 to 10 go-to openers. So then I would just go down the list and pick one that worked. And I'm good at thinking on my feet and ad-libbing from there.
A good one to open up with is you can do a topic of the day, what's happening in the market. You could talk about interest rates moving. "Hey, did you hear that interest rates have doubled in the last year and affordability's become a little more difficult? Did you know that it's actually working in the benefit of people who still want to buy a home because they have now less competition and they're getting better deals and people are getting more flexible?" You can move it in that way where you're talking about the market and a change in the market. Or did you hear about a new X financing program that's come out? Or did you hear about a new development that's happening down the street, something local? That's another way to open up the dialogue, right?
Yeah, and I guess with the case of like a networking call, I would start asking about their business. Like, how are you enjoying your job? Have you been looking with the case of financial advisors, what are you doing to get business? Can I help you out at all?
For people who are doing B2B,
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember who I remember faces and not names. And so I have a hard time. I'm trying to pull up all these folks that have helped. Oh boy, there's a guy up in California, really nice guy. I can picture his face. I'm trying to remember his name, but I'll tell you the story. Anyway,
Mhm.
he closes about 100 transactions a year. Uh, by the way, that's not all his business, just from the one source of a B2B group. And that's what he does with the B2B group. He talks about his whole purpose and focus when he makes these calls is, hey, checking in on you. How's business going? How can I help you improve your business? What area of your business do you need help in? Maybe I can give you a resource, or maybe I can connect you with somebody. Maybe I can refer somebody to you. What would make your business work better today? Right. And so he has a real focus on being that consultant kind of stance with the other person to help them achieve what their goals are. And the old concept is the Zig Ziglar, right? So if you help enough people get what they want, they'll help you get what you want. So
Mhm.
that's a good approach. I like what you just mentioned, and that's certainly an approach that has worked well. Josh, trying to remember the name. Anyway, that was his approach, and many people I've heard. There are other people that have used that model of this B2B approach. If you're calling it a networking group that's already business owners, they are looking on how to expand their business. That would be another way to call them as well. Is, hey, I just heard about this training for generic training for business owners to get more leads or get more conversions or to get more whatever that may apply to what they're looking for. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I'll give you another one, and that is that I've noticed even bigger trend, and that is events. So a ton of the top people are doing events now, just all over the place, and there's a reason for it. Uh, the reason for it is exactly what you just brought up. It gives them a reason to
Mhm.
call. It gives them a purpose other than, hey, who do you know who wants to buy and sell a home in the next 30 to 60 days, which again works, but sometimes that becomes a grind and people may not answer your call. But if you are calling them up to offer them a pie or offer them the opportunity, so Pi Day events is an example, that's the number one biggest event, an opportunity to get a picture with Santa a couple months before Christmas so that they can use it on their cards to mail out to their friends, or uh, uh, king cake testing down in Louisiana, a little party get together. There's so many concepts out there, or a contest where somebody puts into a raffle or a drawing to win something. Very, very popular. A contest where they have to do something, or a giveaway where they don't. They just have to put their name in. It just gives you a reason to
Yeah.
call them and open the dialogue.
One of the agents in my office doesn't just, I think she's done it 4 years now, but a neighborhood dumpster drop off day.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
a
she
great
gets
one. Yeah, they have
crazy
shred
turnout.
days is usually very popular. You bring a big
Yep.
shred truck in to shred your documents. And people, I've heard of them combining it with an environmental day where you're dropping off, old televisions and computer monitors and things that are really hard to get rid of, paint cans. And you team up with these organizations that take that stuff, and they will take it and dispose of it. You pay a small fee and maybe provide the space. So those are really popular. Yeah, they're super popular, especially during spring cleaning time. Yep. And you want to think if you're going to go that route. Oh, so let me just give some more info. So the top agents on events, when I first got into business 30 years ago, they would do an event at the once a year, an end of the year gala. A big giant event, a blowout, and it was expensive and it was tough, but it would generate business and it was fun and people were doing it. Since then, it's become popular to do these mini events, mini MINI, small mini events throughout the year, or multiple events, where the top agents today, when I talk to them, they're doing at least 4 events a year, once a quarter. And a lot of them are now doing at least a monthly event because they're so easy to invite people to and stay in front of them and create some excitement. You can invite through mail, you can invite through the phone, you can invite through text message, you can invite through social media. And the whole point of it is just to keep your face and your mug in front of them. So when they do bump into real estate, they remember you. Because that's the worst thing that ever happens, right? You bump into somebody and they say, oh, I wish I would have remembered you. I already hired so-and-so to help me sell my house. And then you got to, if you step back and say why that happened, it's usually because you weren't staying in front of them. They just couldn't remember. Okay. So there's all these different kinds of events that you can do throughout the year. Cookie tasting, which was one I thought was pretty neat. Some people will bake cookies and they'll have their friends bake cookies. They come together, they put the cookies on a table, they put recipes next to it. They say, taste these cookies, and they find out the one they like the best. And if you like it, you take the recipe and you walk away. Just the reason I bring that up is it's very creative. It's small. It's easy to do. You can do giveaways for gift cards. You can do, those are really easy to run. Again, it gives you a great reason to call, like a spring cleaning gift card any time of the year. Oh, one more thing. When you're doing events, you should look at the seasonality of your local market. So for instance, around here, and I assume it's similar to most of the US, but around here, we get this big swing and uptick in business in the spring. It's the busiest time of year for transactions, buyers and sellers. So that's around April and May. And then it falls off during the summer, even though it's higher in the summer than it is in the winter. It's falling off a little bit, and then September hits another blip and it goes down. If you can see trends like that in your market that are happening every single year, what you want to do is put your events, say a month or two before that. So you got to kind of go backwards in people's activity. When would they have been putting their home on the market? And therefore then go back another month. When would they have been thinking about it? That's when you want to be doing your event. So a lot of these people, a lot of the top agents they'll front end load these events into the early part of the year, because that's when they're getting a lot of, they know that's where the big bulge is about to come in and have a lot of activity. So they know that it's not flat and you get the same number of transactions every month. There's a big bulge or group in the spring. So that early January and February, they're trying to do events to get themselves in front of people, to remind them, hey, I'm here if you're ready to move this year. Okay. Does that help a little bit?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Cool. Other thing.
The reality is I just need to commit the time to do it, but there's always that.
Well, let's look at this. What did you do 10 plus years ago, those first 3 years when you were building up? How often were you calling? When were you calling? More structurally, how did you structure it in your time management?
It's a different scenario. My wife works for the airline, so now she's gone all the time. So I'm driving kids around. We've talked about hiring a driver, and some of the other parents in my neighborhood do that, but we've decided I want to be there for the kids. So that being said, 13 years ago, I was 40 plus hours a week, and I was just hitting, what I would do is I always, to this day, I hold a 3-ring binder, and then at the end I put marketing ideas. And if I was in a go-getter day, I'd pick up the phone and start calling people. And if I wasn't, I'd work on my Facebook or something, Google Maps or something like that. That was something, a little more introverted task that day. And I would just work all those days. And that being said, I make more today than I did back then.
Right.
Because,
yeah, that's the buildup. That happens when you start to get some mass, right? You have more connections. If you look at it, it's probably because you have a better sphere and tighter connections, better networking than you had in the past.
I do prospect a little bit. I'm exaggerating, but nothing like I used to. And so I need to grow my business by 30% this next year.
If you can time block on your calendar a certain time of the day that you're going to make these calls. Usually it's best to do things in the morning if you want to have them happen repetitively, because our business tends to blow up. A lot of action and activity happens in the afternoons and the evenings. That's when people
Yeah.
are showing. That's when contracts are going, and things get kind of crazy. But if you can make your calls in the morning, say from 9 to 10 every day, whatever your hour of power is, and you put that in your calendar and that becomes the dedicated time, you have a better chance of creating a habit and
Yeah,
making it
that's a good idea.
happen. I'll give you another trick for that. If you set your hour of power in the morning to be calling out to your sphere and touching base with them, you can, if you're having a hard time getting started, right, which is what you
Yep.
started the conversation with. Yes, I got this, I want to do it, but I'm having a hard time getting into it. First, time block it. Here's the other thing. You're going to make a commitment to yourself to do one of two things during that time. You're either going to make the actual phone calls or you're going to practice your script. Okay. And so what that means is you're either going to talk to a real person with your script or you're going to talk to yourself with the script. Okay. And if you talk to yourself with the script, number one, you're getting better at the script and more confident with it. Okay. But after an hour of that, for a
You're
couple
gonna get
days,
sick of
you're
it.
going to be like, why don't I just talk to regular people? Okay.
Yeah.
And logically, we know that. But if you do it, if you actually commit to doing it, you will, if you repeat your script, in an hour, how many, depending on the script, how many times you're going to actually say those words, 50 times. And then you did that, say, for 4 days in a row, that's 200 times. Now you know your script extremely well. And now you want to use it on someone. So it gives you a modus to want to jump into it. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You just commit to either I'm going to talk to myself or I'm going to talk to a person. And so you're going to chicken out and talk to yourself for the first couple of days, but after a while, you're going to want to talk to somebody live. That's another way to trick yourself into it. Okay.
That sounds good.
Yeah. These are great questions. What else can I share with you? Oh, here's a couple other, because this is a great topic. Here's a couple of other ideas that I've heard from people is they'll do, if you're into social media, they'll do a quick social media scan. Okay. If these people are friends for you on in your network, you're already seeing them in your feed. If not, you can just search them and look what's going on in their feeds. But you can do a quick social media scan for, say, 5 or 10 minutes before you're going to make your calls. And you can see what's happening in their world, right? Based on their social media feed. Maybe they just went to Alaska. Maybe they just went to Hawaii. My daughter just did that, so I'm bringing it up. She just had a good time. And so people that just did that, they want to talk about it. It's very exciting and fun for them. So you could just call up and say, hey, I know this sounds weird, but I was just on Facebook and I saw that you went to Alaska. How'd it go? What'd you see? Did you run into a bear? Did you play with a moose? What happened up there? Did you go fishing? What'd you do? And that just starts the dialogue. You were asking for openers. That's a great opener.
That is a great opener. And we travel a lot, so I can sincerely ask them, if you win again, what would you do differently? What areas did you like? What didn't you like? Yeah.
Where do you think I should stay if I were to go?
Yeah.
Is there anything you think I shouldn't do? Was there anything up there that really stunk and you wouldn't do again? You can help me save some time, right? So you can always come at it from that angle as well. And then you're basically digging into their expertise. So these are great ways to stay in front of them. Now, if you want to take that direct approach after that, then you can do the other. Let me point this out. Something that the top agents do, like I mentioned Monica earlier, she doesn't like to do direct prospecting, but she's happy to do a add-on. That's why I call it an add-on, where she just does an add-on script at the end. And I believe her script is something along the lines of, so towards the end of the conversation, she just says, hey, by the way, I'm here for you if you ever need anything. That's it. It's a very soft, subtle approach, right? I'm here for you if you ever need anything. She doesn't even say real estate, but that's the underlying current of her statement, and people get it. And obviously, at 162 closings a year, it obviously must work. So that's her add-on. And by the way, she also likes to do events. Her goal is to do some kind of reach out once a month. I think she does 4 events a year. She has a news. She wants to mail something 4 times a year, And then she sends an email 4 times a year to her spirit. And then, of course, it's just every other month rotating.
So I saw her call on the summit.
Yeah.
With all due respect, when I hear people selling over 100 homes, I did 35 transactions one year, and I wasn't very happy. It was a ton of work. I don't know how someone could do 100. And was she the one that did 162 transactions?
Yeah.
Is she going for world domination, or what's the end game?
Right. Some people are just geared that way, and I know it's mind-blowing. The reason I bring it up,
doing it for a long time too.
Yeah, she's been at a pretty high level for a while. Although if you listen to her story, the early days, she wasn't, it took a little bit to click. But she's a pretty hard driver. Not everybody starts, some people start off with a bang and some people don't. Mm-hmm. And some people have big goals and ambition, and some people are just driven just because they're driven. We don't know. You'd have to go into the psychology of what's driving them behind the scenes.
Sure.
And you're right. That's not for everybody. I guess
the reason I bring that story up is I don't think I'm alone when I hear 100, and I have absolutely no desire
And that's good. You should know exactly what your goal is. Your goal should be to you, because that's what's going to drive you. And in fact, as you just pointed out, thinking of doing 100 might scare the snot out of somebody.
It does.
And I get that. I did 113, but I did it because I had an assistant, I had some help. But
how much free time did you have that year?
Get there. My first year I only closed 5. My second year I closed 7. And
so what was your average work week when you did 113? You're putting in 80-hour weeks?
You know what? I was working like a madman. I was crazy. Yeah. That's the truth. That's the fact. It was, I took 21 listings in 30 days. I mean, I was going out all over the place. I was working really hard. And it was really, my biggest challenge then was to try to find a way to take time off. And the way it happened was I finally said, my marriage was getting shaky, right? My wife she was stressing because it had been years. I didn't take a vacation for over 7 years, right? It was becoming very tough. And the 7-day-a-week work week, I was okay with it, but she wasn't. And she wanted me to be around more for our kids. We had small kids at the time. And so what I did was I said, you know what? I'm going to take Sundays off. I'd heard another agent doing it, and they had a technique. Now, remember, this was years ago, didn't have as much technology, but it was a pretty simple way to set it up at the time, and you can use a similar concept. Is, first of all, I just told everybody I'm taking Sunday off. If they asked, I'm just not available. And then you had to I used the technology to help me get that across to people. So for instance, at the time it was voicemail. And so on my voicemail, I had it in the system where a voicemail came up that said, I'm not working today. Today is Sunday. I'm taking the day off to spend with my wife and my family and rejuvenate my spirit. And I'll be back in touch with you on Monday morning. If you have any offers, go ahead and send them here, and we'll take care of them during the week. And I was able to block out that Sunday, which was a really difficult challenge at first. But once I did it and committed to it, everybody fell in line. Everybody was fine with it. It worked great. But yeah, doing that kind of volume is intense. You have to be a certain personality, and you have to have a certain drive. It was a goal I had for many years. And again, it took me, I got to go add it up, but I think it was 7 years to hit that. It took a while. 5, 7, 20, 21, 20. Then I went to 41, 95, and then 113. So it took a while to climb up to that. But that was the big goal at the time. No, there were very few people doing 100 units, and that's something I wanted to do. Now there are a lot more. Yeah, I don't know if any of that helped. Getting back to your point, though, you need to set a goal that matches you. For instance, something I've noticed over the last couple of years, I've started another podcast called Solo Agent World, because I was bumping all these people who are solo agents who are, to me, they're knocking it out of the park by being very consistent in selling 20 homes a year or 30 homes a year or 40 homes a year, sometimes 50 or 60. But there's a lot of people in that 20 to 30 mark I'm just so impressed with. They're typically doing it without an assistant. They're crushing it. They're living a lifestyle that they want, and they have super high profit margins. So again, I think you need to structure the business around what you want. And nobody ever talks about profit margins, but it's the reason that I'm pushing so hard on referral-based practices. They have a massive profit margin compared to if you're going out there and doing a marketing-based business, which I did a lot of. I did a lot of geographic farming as an example. It's very expensive. So if you do a referral-based practice, your profit margin is going to be huge, and you don't have to sell as many homes to bring as much as much money back to yourself and your family.
Yeah, we're a Realty company, and we have one of the national Realty salespeople came to work for us, and he said, "Yeah, we had a agent. I'm not going to say where, but in a major market, and she was doing 1.2 million a year gross sales, and she was netting 40,000 a year because she had 12 team members, and we had to lend her. We had to lend her money."
Oh, her GCI, her gross
GCI was 1.2 million. Her net income was 40,000.
I've actually bumped into many people in that similar category. And by the way, not everybody that's up there that has that problem, but let's do some numbers. For people that are running a team successfully, they're probably in the 10 to 20% net profit margin. So if they were bringing in $1 million gross, they have to pay all their people out, all their expenses out. About 200,000 would come home to them. That'd be a good example. They may be slightly more, slightly below that, but that's a pretty good number when the machine is working well, because they're building up a machine. The problem is when markets shift, like we just have had happen here recently. That's where I've talked to some people who they have a big business, and the market shifts, and they end up upside down, where they were making 200,000 in net profit, and now they're losing 200,000 in a loss, and that gets ugly fast. So, if building a team is a hard way to go. It works. I've talked to people that have done well with it, but it also can be very expensive and frustrating and hard to roll out. You're correct. The margins can get thin. Now let's talk about a solo agent. A solo agent, especially one running a repeat and referral type practice, they can get their profit margins up over 50%, sometimes as high as 70%. And I've even talked to them where they're up at 90%. And I'm not talking about somebody closing one deal a year. I'm talking about somebody closing 20, 30, 40, 50 homes a year where their profit margins are up at 90%. And if you figure out your commission in your area, that could be some really good dough. I know agents that are getting very close to the take home of a 7-figure as a solo agent. So yeah, it's a pretty cool system. If you can do it. Now, they do have to work in the field every day, right? You kind of brought that up in this conversation. How hard do you want to work? Well, if you want to work the least, in my opinion, and have the biggest profit margins, do repeat and referral.
Okay, that helps. And I think I am around 90%. I just need more transactions.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Then it just becomes expanding out your network a bit and staying on top of the people that are already in. Here's another gauge that might help you with your repeat and referral business, and that is the 5-10-20 rule. And that is this. I've been interviewing and talking to a lot of people over the last couple of years, and I've got a lot. I like stats, so I got a lot of stats from them. They were kind enough to give me some of their numbers. And basically what falls out of that is the people who actually create their PCSO. I know that sounds crazy, but a lot of people never even create it. If they create their list of past clients, their sphere, their friends and family, they put the list together. That's step one. If you can get past that, and then you put in step two, which is put the plan together on how to reach out with them with an annual marketing plan. Okay. So the people who are doing that, but they're just kind of tipping their toe in, they're not consistent, their marketing isn't great, but they're actually taking some action. They're typically getting around 5% of their list repeating and referring. So you got a list of 100, that's 5 closings a year every single year. Pretty cool stuff.
That's where I think I am, and I think most people are.
Well, if they're
Well,
looking to get above that, most people I talk to don't even have the list.
well, that's true. Most
So
people
I
don't have.
actually
You're
commend
right.
you for having a list, because
Yeah.
I'm telling you, a lot of people don't. So, and some people that would shock you, people who have closed hundreds or even thousands of transactions in their career and they have no list. Those are the people that I go, wow, what are we doing here? But anyway, let's stick on this. If you have a list, you're ahead of the game. And if you're at 5%, that's good. That's something, and that's coming in. And that is where the people who have a list, you're correct. They're usually in that round 5%, 3%, 5%, whatever, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
If they can get better in their marketing and their consistency, they should be able to bump that up to 10%. Well, that's doubling the number of closings you're getting every year. That's everything to keep remembering. It's every single year. So if you do better reach outs, like you were starting this conversation with on the phone, you have better marketing pieces that going out. Basically, what you're doing is staying in front of them, right? You got to remember the Nar survey, where what was it? 84% of the people that were surveyed who just closed a transaction last year with a realtor, 84% of them said, "Love the transaction, and I would hire that agent again." And they asked
10 to 15% do.
What's that?
10 to 15% do.
Right. Well, they asked the follow-up question, and the follow-up question to these clients, these past clients, only a year old. They said, "Oh, great. What's the name of your agent?" 11% could name their agent. Only 11% can remember the name. And it's not their fault, right? Life happens. We do other things. Tell me the name of the guy or the gal who sold you your car. You probably don't remember, but it was a big deal to them. But we don't remember their name because they didn't stay in touch with us. So it's our job to stay in touch with the folks that we want to remember our name. But only 11%, 1 in 10 can remember our name. So people all the time say, "Well, Mike, I did a great job for them." They'll remember. Yeah, they'll remember that you did a great job, but they can't remember your name. They can't remember how to get in touch with you. So they're just going to go on to the next person because it's too hard for them to figure it out. We got to make it super easy and simple. We send them a postcard with our picture and our name and our phone number. We send them an email with the same information. We call them up and we say, "How you doing?" We got to stay in front of them and in their lives, because we don't know the day they're going to wake up and go, "Ready to move." All right, let me finish off the big picture, the 5, 10, 20, 5, 10, 20 real fast. The people who get really good at repeat and referral, these top solo agents are usually in that group. They're hitting 20% of their list repeating and referring every single year. Numbers like 19, 18, 20, 21, 22, like Monica's 23. Okay, so I'm tracking their numbers. It's phenomenal. And again, it's every single year. You can see how that becomes the core of their business. The reason I bring it up, if you're sitting at a 5%, you could double the 10%. You could just do the same number of people just by getting better with your marketing and your effectiveness. Okay, you can go to 10. And if you got really good and dialed this thing in, you could go to 20. That means 4 times as much business as you're currently doing with the same list. Is that exciting or what?
Yeah.
Well, I give this because it should be a motivation, right? So hopefully, Dean, this is a motivation to pick up that phone and start calling, right? Or do some reach outs, set up an annual marketing plan. See, can I get, this is the question I'd ask myself if I were you. Can I go from 5 to 10% this year? Can I put this thing up? Maybe I could even get to 15%. That's tripling my business. And I'm still below the best of the best. It's not like I'm asking myself to do something that's impossible. I'm not saying I'm going to go to 50%, right? I'm just going to try to get as good as the best people. And they're getting up there at 20%. That's my goal. That's my target. That's what I'm striving for my excellence.
I think that's what I'm going to incorporate in my plan is, number one, calculate what my ROI is on my sphere. I don't know what my percentage is. I know it's below 5%. And then, focus on that.
I love it. I love that you're going to do a self-analysis on what's happened in the past and where you are. And it's pretty simple. How big is my list of PCSOI? That's one number you need. And the other number is how many closings did I have last year that were repeat and referral. If you have those two numbers, you can figure out your percent.
Well, and the good news is I've got the plan in place and I've got the postcards in the drawer, and I've had them for 5 years now, so they're ready to go.
The drawer is really doing a lot of business with the other drawer.
Nobody's come from my sphere and opened my drawer to look at them yet.
Right. And why are people walking into my office and taking
right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, hopefully this will give you some motivation. The best thing to do is you've already made the list. That's step one. Step two is make the plan. Actually write out an annual plan. You could start it right now in the middle of the year. You don't have to wait till the beginning.
I actually have one. So
just start implementing it, right? Write it out, and then the implementation. And the goal should be like Monica's, at least be in front of them once a month. And you're like, that's too often. Well, what you do is you sprinkle in different ways to get in touch with them, right? So maybe one is through the mail, it's postcard. One is through email, electronic. One is through social media. One is calling them on the phone. You're sprinkling in different mediums throughout the year, so it doesn't seem like you're coming at them really hard by one medium all the time. And it's going to be easier on you, easier on them. And the whole point is you just want to stay in front of them, right? Again, you just don't know the day they're going to wake up and go, today's the day we got to move. That's the day you want to be there. Since you don't know that day, you got to just hit them as frequently as you can without being crazy, like every single day would be too much, right? All right, Dean, well, I look forward to hearing what your plan is when you get that put together and implemented. That's going to be sweet. Let's see if anybody else, I've been kind of hogging the time here. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to mention to Dean about his idea and his question of putting this together, making these initial phone calls or reach outs to his sphere? Actually, I guess it's not initial, but just reaching out to them frequently.
I don't really, but you just got posted today, and I'm sorry, my working and computer is kicking me off. So if you lose me, that's why. Actually, this morning, when I was like, "Oh, this me anywhere?"
Yeah, you're a little staticky, Laura. Laura, you're a little staticky. You were mentioning your computer's off. It sounds like you still have a tough connection.
Right. Yeah, it's on. All right. Well, I appreciate it. Everything that you've been talking about.
Oh, cool, Laura. And try to call back in, come back in on your computer, or you can even call in on the phone number as well to give us some input. It's good to have you here. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else who would like to give Dean some advice on, it's too bad because Laura always has some good input. Anybody else who's got some advice for Dean on making those calls, those frequent calls out to his PCSOI? Okay. All right.
I'd say the other big difference between 13 years ago and today is 13 years ago, I had to do it.
Right. You know? Yeah, that's right. You had burned the bridge behind you. You burned the boats. You had to move forward, and now you have options.
Yeah.
And that's why, by the way, we'll wrap up with this then. You got to get yourself another goal. Right? The goal before was don't go backwards and fall in the ravine. Now you got to do something maybe moving forward, a carrot rather than a stick. Is there something out there that excites you that you want to go after? If that's true, then it might be a driver for you. So you might want to set a big goal up, maybe an audacious goal, a big goal out there in front of you. Again, like I mentioned before, maybe you want to have 10 rental units in the next 10 years, or something that's a big goal out there that you want to go after and achieve for a certain purpose or a reason. Or fully fund my kids' college fund might be one for someone. Or I always wanted to go to the Galapagos Islands, and so that's your big thing, and you want to set up a big trip. I always set up some goals that might give you a reason to reach out there and grasp for it. Well, let's do this. We've come to the end of our time for today. This was a lot of fun. I hope it was helpful. Dean, thank you so much for jumping in. Laura, thank you for trying to jump in with us. We do this every week. If you want to come back and talk with us again next week, same time, same place. We also record these, or we try to record them. Hopefully this one came through. If it did, we'll be posting it out on YouTube, and you can see it on our channel. Just go to Mastermind Agent Network. Mastermind Agent Network is the channel name, and you can find this call. We'll also post it into our Facebook group if you're in the Facebook Mastermind group. All right, again, thank you everybody for joining us today, and hope you have a fantastic afternoon. Be productive. Bye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dean.